What if everything you thought you knew about the San Francisco 49ers' future just changed overnight because of one statement from Brock Purdy? Not a rumor, not a leak, not anonymous sources whispering to insiders, but a direct, clear, calculated announcement from the quarterback himself. When Brock Purdy stepped to the podium and addressed the media, the tone wasn't casual and it wasn't routine. It was deliberate. And what he said didn't just echo inside Levi's Stadium, it sent shockwaves across the entire NFL. For months, maybe even a year, the conversation around the 49ers has revolved around one central question. Is Brock Purdy truly the franchise quarterback who can carry this team to a Super Bowl title? Or is he simply the perfect system fit, benefiting from elite coaching and an all-star roster? That debate has followed him since the moment he replaced Trey Lance and later Jimmy Garoppolo. It has been fueled by analysts on ESPN, debated by fans on social media, and dissected by former quarterbacks who believe they understand what separates good from elite. But Purdy's announcement reframed that entire narrative. Instead of leaning into the comfort of being labeled Mr. Irrelevant turned Cinderella story, Purdy made it clear that he is done with the underdog identity. He stated that his focus is not on proving doubters wrong, but on elevating standards inside the locker room. He emphasized accountability, urgency, and a championship or bust mindset.
That matters, because when the quarterback shifts the internal culture, the entire structure of the team shifts with him. This is no longer about development, it's about dominance. The 49ers under Kyle Shanahan have been consistent contenders. They've reached NFC championship games. They've been on the doorstep of greatness. But falling just short repeatedly creates psychological residue. Near misses can either harden a roster or quietly erode belief. Purdy's message was clear. The standard in San Francisco is not deep playoff runs, it is winning the Super Bowl. That declaration changes expectations, not only externally but internally. When your quarterback publicly raises the bar, veterans like Trent Williams, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey now operate under amplified pressure. Leaders cannot coast. Coaches cannot rely solely on scheme superiority. Execution must sharpen. The interesting dynamic here is how this impacts contract negotiations and roster construction. Purdy is approaching the phase of his career where discussions about long-term extension value become unavoidable. Quarterback market inflation is real. When players like Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts reset the market, every promising quarterback follows. Purdy signaling that he expects championship standards implicitly signals he views himself as a franchise pillar. If he sees himself in that tier psychologically, negotiations will reflect that confidence. That forces the front office to evaluate sustainability. Can they maintain elite weapons around him if his cap hit rises dramatically, or does Purdy's development justify restructuring the roster around him as the primary asset?
This announcement accelerates that timeline. It removes ambiguity. From a football standpoint, what makes this significant is Purdy's evolution in command presence. Early in his career, he thrived on rhythm passing, quick decision-making, and reading leverage in Shanahan's layered route concepts. Defenses adjusted. They began disguising coverage rotations, baiting him into middle field throws and compressing windows late. The growth question was always about how he would respond once defensive coordinators accumulated film. His statement suggests he understands that the next step is mental domination, not just schematic execution. He is not content being efficient. He wants control. That difference is subtle but enormous. Efficiency wins games. Control wins championships. Look historically at quarterbacks who made that leap. Tom Brady shifted from system caretaker to offensive dictator. Patrick Mahomes evolved from backyard brilliance to situational assassin. The turning point often begins with a mindset shift. Purdy's announcement reads like that pivot moment. Inside the locker room, this creates clarity. Defensive leaders like Nick Bosa thrive when they know the offense can close games. Special teams units gain confidence when late drives are not coin flips. A quarterback's voice carries disproportionate weight because he touches the ball every snap.
If that voice now demands sharper film study, higher tempo practices, and ruthless fourth-quarter execution, ripple effects follow. However, there is risk embedded here. Raising expectations publicly means backlash intensifies if results lag. The NFL is unforgiving. One interception in a high-profile game, and critics will replay his statement to frame him as overconfident. That's the trade-off. Leadership invites scrutiny, but avoiding leadership invites stagnation. Purdy appears to have chosen the harder path. Strategically, this also pressures Kyle Shanahan. For years, Shanahan's offensive genius has been both praised and quietly questioned because of postseason collapses. If his quarterback is now openly championing a title mandate, Shanahan must respond with adaptive aggressiveness. That could mean more vertical concepts, more autonomy at the line of scrimmage, and fewer conservative sequences in critical moments. The partnership between coach and quarterback defines ceiling. If Purdy's voice grows, Shanahan must either empower it or risk friction. Pressure management becomes essential. What fascinates analysts is how this shifts national perception. For a long time, debates compared Purdy to quarterbacks drafted higher, measuring arm strength, athleticism, and improvisational flair. His value was framed as comparative efficiency. By reframing the conversation around leadership and standards, Purdy sidesteps the trait debate and moves into outcome territory. Championships silence trait comparisons. Rings recalibrate narratives permanently. If he delivers, this moment will be replayed as the day the transformation began. If he falls short, critics will label it premature bravado. That binary is brutal, yet elite competitors accept it. There's also a tactical implication for opponents. Defensive coordinators now prepare for a quarterback who publicly embraces responsibility. That often translates into expanded playbooks. Expect more audibles, more protection adjustments, more deep intermediate concepts attacking cover two seams and quarter structures. When quarterbacks assert ownership, coordinators grant latitude. That latitude changes defensive stress points. It forces disguised looks to hold longer, which can open running lanes for McCaffrey and widen crossing windows for Ayuk and Kittle. Everything interconnects. The NFC landscape adds further intrigue. With teams like the Detroit Lions ascending and the Philadelphia Eagles retooling, the margin for error narrows. Purdy's timing suggests he understands competitive volatility. Dominance cycles shift quickly. Strike while structure is intact. That message to teammates is clear. Complacency is regression. Another dimension is media psychology. The label Mr. Irrelevant once shielded Purdy from harsh critique because expectations were low. By stepping forward with championship rhetoric, he sheds that insulation. That is maturity. It is also exposure. The public recalibrates standards instantly. But perhaps that is precisely the point. Great teams do not hide behind draft position narratives. They establish new identities. The 49ers under Shanahan have flirted with dynasty language without securing the ultimate validation. Purdy's announcement signals impatience with flirtation. He wants finality. He wants Lombardi validation. In practical terms, this could mean off-season regiment intensification, quarterback-driven player-only workouts, film breakdown sessions focused not on weekly opponents, but situational mastery, 2-minute drills, red zone compression, third and long conversion analytics. Details separate contenders from champions. If Purdy is spearheading that detail obsession, teammates will follow. Yet skepticism remains rational. Declaring championship intent does not guarantee execution under playoff pressure. Defensive fronts in January compress space. Weather disrupts timing. Officials swallow whistles. The league's parity ensures brutality. Purdy must translate rhetoric into precision when windows close. That is the crucible. However, avoiding bold declaration rarely produces bold outcomes. What makes this moment compelling is that it redefines the internal timeline. The 49ers are no longer building, they are attacking. That philosophical shift influences every decision, from draft board prioritization to fourth down aggressiveness. It affects how Shanahan scripts opening drives and how Purdy handles checkdowns versus risk shots late in games. It influences locker room tone after narrow victories. Are they satisfied or self-critical? Purdy's message suggests the latter. Long-term, this announcement could anchor his legacy. Quarterbacks are remembered not only for statistics, but for inflection points. Statements that crystallize intent often precede historic runs. Consider how elite leaders articulate purpose before breakthroughs. Purdy's framing aligns with that archetype. Whether he joins that echelon depends on execution. The raw tools debate may never fully disappear, but leadership can supersede arm velocity metrics. In the modern NFL, mental processing speed, anticipation, and resilience often outpace sheer physical traits. Purdy's strength has always been decisiveness. If that decisiveness now extends beyond reads into cultural command, the 49ers' ceiling elevates. Ultimately, this announcement changes everything because it removes ambiguity about ambition. It challenges teammates, pressures coaches, accelerates roster urgency, and recalibrates public expectation. It dares the league to respond. And it positions Brock Purdy not as a feel-good draft anomaly, but as a quarterback demanding to be measured against the highest standard possible. The next season will determine whether this was a soundbite or a spark. But one thing is certain. The conversation around the San Francisco 49ers is no longer about whether they are close. It is about whether they will finish. And that shift, initiated by their quarterback, is seismic.